We've officially added another competitor in the full-size electric truck class. From the Rivian R1T that started it all the way to the Tesla Cybertruck, the most outrageous looking thing on the market right now, we have a new contender with more range than anything that's been put on the market yet.
Hello and welcome to Performance on Wheels. My name is Todd. My son Austin and I, we make all sorts of videos on all sorts of different cars. Join us today as we check out the 2024 Chevrolet Silverado EV.
The Silverado LT is the most popular trim of truck that is currently selling by GM, so we only found it fitting to look at the EV version of the LT Silverado. However, unlike the LT Silverado 1500, which starts around $48,000, we are looking at a $75,000 example. Over $25,000 starting price gap between these two vehicles. Is it really worth 25 grand to get rid of a V8? And throw in some EV battery packs? Let's go ahead and find out.
All right, let's check out the inside of the Silverado EV, and Lord have mercy, take in everything that there is to take in as you enter this $75,000 vehicle. When you look below your seat where you have your obviously power seats for both driver and passenger in this $75,000 vehicle, check out that beautiful door sill, check out the beautiful dashboard, and then let's go back to what's going to welcome us and surround us, the door panel. And why I ask you to check out those beautiful components is they are all black, and if you really like percussion, you could have a good time in the Silverado. That's because all you will get is different sounds as you knock on the very hard plastic that surrounds you. Whether it's your knee hitting the center console, whether it's your knee hitting the door, whether you are touching anywhere on the dashboard, it is hard plastic, which is just baffling to me at a $75,000 price point, that all you get is plastic. There is nothing that even looks luxurious. I'm sorry, Chevrolet, but I am going to be picking on what is supposed to be your stitching on your dashboard over there on, again, your cheap hard plastic. There's some sort of stitching that isn't necessarily straight, and it doesn't really look that good. I don't get it. When we get over that, and when I calm down my tantrum on the plastic party in here, we do have a very nice display, which is common theme now for Chevy products. Austin will obviously talk about the fun tech stuff and whatnot. And most EV products do have a good job of different storage and whatnot. There's just different things, though, that are just weird and frustrating. You have to turn the car on and off in the screen, and if you want to turn the headlights on, you gotta get into the screen. And an old guy like myself, I just don't get it. So it's very challenging to just try to do some simple things. Obviously, you'll get used to it with time. But I'm disappointed. I look up at the headrest and everything is just cheap. Checking out the back seat of the Silverado, obviously we have more than enough space, but the one thing I want to point out here, Austin, back the heck up and look at my legs, my friend, because what you see is like this angle of my legs, which is weird for a full-size truck. This is like more of a seating of a third row SUV, where you like your waist to be up a little bit higher than your legs, and that's the way most half-ton trucks are, that you feel like you're sitting a little higher. But it's like puts this weird strain on your hip flexors sitting back here. You obviously have more than enough room, but the plastic party really continues. I don't even have a center armrest in this $75,000 Silverado. I do have some heated seats, but from there, that's what we got, kids.
Starting up front of the Silverado EV. Now, the Silverado EV is on the exact same platform as the Hummer EV, but notice this entirely different front end. Now, this Hummer EV is much more angular, much more aggressive looking. It looks tough, it looks big, but they went for a completely different design here on the Silverado EV. It's much more tame, it's much more subtle. Yeah. And when you compare it to the standard Silverado, it even then just looks like a bubbly version of it. It just smoothed off all the lines. It took all the angular pieces and just made them a big bubble, basically. So this whole front end has this nice light bar across the front, this bubbly Chevy logo that's illuminated. It looks quite nice. I am also a big fan of this additional illuminated Chevy logo out on the side markers on the side of this truck. But that's my best way of describing the front end of this truck. It's just a bubblier version of the standard Silverado 1500 and a less angular, less aggressive looking version than its counterpart, the Hummer EV, and there's a big reason for that. Now, this thing has 450 miles of range. Notice how that's more than the Hummer EV with like the same battery pack. That's a lot to do with the aero on the front of this truck. This is a dramatically more aerodynamic vehicle than the brick going down the road of the Hummer EV.
Even sitting next to it, or standing next to it, I should say, and like putting your arm on the hood up here, you can see and tell that this is different than standing next to a, not only for this reason, that this opens and there's no motor in there, but just like standing next to it and putting your arm up here, it feels more like a, I don't know, a mid-size SUV than a full-size truck. It's not squared off like Austin's saying.
One thing, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one thing, now that we're under the hood here, that I find very funny, you know, on your standard car, when you have a battery somewhere, it gives you a little battery logo, right? Like, this is where your battery is. This is where you need to unhook it. Apparently they're very worried about fires here on the Silverado EV because they put a fireman's helmet where the battery goes and a big indicator on where you have to cut the battery if you're a firefighter. So apparently they're worried about the old Silverado burning to the ground.
The one thing that we will see that is a common theme throughout today's video is plastic. And let's just take in the beautiful plastic that is under the frunk here, because that is something that we will continue to talk about. And as we like move on from here, I do just want to comment that your side light bars are your turn signals. Obviously your actual headlights are down below. And then you have your unibrow like Austin mentioned.
I do like how they are kind of sequential in here. And one thing that I like about actually inside of the trunk, we have ourselves an outlet. So if we're heading down to Grandma Ida's Thanksgiving party, we can throw a crock pot up front and let it run while we head down the road. And on top of that, say we want a tailgate, well, you can tailgate from the back or the front because you have cup holders under here and an entirely like waterproof material that is outlined in here, and it's actually water sealed as well. So we have this nice seal around here to make sure nothing gets in up front. I think ultimately that sums up everything on the front of this thing. Let's show you what's different on the side. We need to give a huge shout out to Apple Autos for supplying the Silverado EV used in today's video. It is currently for sale for just over $75,000 here in Northfield, Minnesota. They deliver US wide. If you guys are interested in purchasing the Silverado EV, be sure to check out the link down in the description below. Just before my dad starts talking about the side here, I want to talk about something that's really irritating about that frunk on the Silverado EV. Now on your standard frunk, you just press a button and it closes, right? On the Silverado EV, both inside and on the key fob, you have to hold the button down to get it to close. So the reason that's super irritating is it's a key fob, you know, you lose signal as it's closing every now and then. So you can be holding the button and all of a sudden it randomly loses signal and then it'll just stop and then bounce a little bit. And then when you go to press it again, it opens itself back up, and then you press it again and it just stops and bounces a little bit. But ultimately you have to press this button twice and then hold this button. And if you let go of this button or the key fob loses signal, your frunk stops closing. I think it's really annoying.
Yeah, there's obviously a safety design there, but there are some flaws that make it a little frustrating just with us checking out the Silverado today. As you can see, we are in LT form looking at the side here. So we have 18-inch gloss black wheels, not the massive 24-inch optional.
Do you realize how big that is?
It's huge.
There's a 6-inch difference in wheels that you can get on this truck. That is a massive set of wheels.
Yeah, and those wheels are just below the massive plastic wheel arches, which then lead into the massive plastic running board. And if you see, this is what makes the Silverado EV different.
Avalanche.
The Avalanche different. I mean the Silva Avalanche different because it's not the truck bed. It's what used to be the Avalanche back in the day, where it was like a unibody platform, not underneath. Well, it is underneath, but it is also up here that the bed is connected to the rest. And that's really cool in the RST trim because you have the complete slide through, a lot of universal space in the back. But here in the LT trim, it is not even an option.
Which is ridiculous to me.
It's crazy.
So you get the work truck, which you would think would be the most utilitarian one, and you can't even fold this centerpiece down. You have to get the super high-end one to do that. See, I think that's what makes this truck appealing, is that whole center fold-down thing, and the fact you don't get that on the base model, let alone this $75,000 LT we're looking at. You have to spend $106,000 to get that. I think that's ridiculous.
That is a little crazy. And obviously same size bed, regardless of the Silverado EV you're looking at, which is very similar to an F-150 Lightning. That massive tail light. It looks kind of cool when you start looking at the details there. There's a lot of dimension in the back of it. It looks really good.
Yeah. Before we flip the camera around back and start moving our way to the tailgate, I want to talk about the battery in this truck, which you can see from about here to here. Now, on this trim in particular, there's this big chunk of plastic covering it up, so it doesn't look as bad, but on the fancier models, this is a big gloss black panel, and I think it looks so unbelievably cheap. But what is behind that panel is a 205 kilowatt hour battery. Do you guys understand how massive that is? Now, your standard EV is going to have anywhere from a 70 to 110 kilowatt hour battery. 205 is absolutely ridiculous. And just for comparison, the Rivian R1T, you know, that amazing truck that's on the road right now, like probably one of the coolest electric trucks on the road right now, has a 130 kilowatt hour battery. 205 kilowatts. That is a absolute tank of a battery, which helps it achieve that 450 mile estimated range. That is very impressive. Now, one other thing while I'm sitting here is these running boards, right? They're kind of baked in or built into the side of that battery, but right in the center of them, we have these 3 lines. Now, those are kind of GM's way of identifying electric cars. Now, you can see that on the E of the Silverado, they made those blue, so we have that here on our running boards. We also have it on the top of the tailgate, and you can find this on other electric Chevrolet models, such as the Blazer, the Equinox, and now the Silverado.
Now that Austin is done with his battery rant, let's keep talking about the outside design of the Silverado in the back here, where it's kind of fun. But that plastic party does continue as we come along back, because we've got a nice big old plastic bumper.
Huge.
The tailgate on the Silverado is nothing really new. It's not a new design. We have 2 different buttons to choose from here. We either have the one that's going to lower the top like quarter of the tailgate, or we have the whole tailgate that can come down. That's just a nice slow down, but you got to use all your strength to push it back up. If we take it another step, we know that we can obviously transition this even further into a step to get up, which that's a nice feature. But then again, as we mentioned before, once we get up here, we have a smaller truck bed that doesn't have those fun options that would make this really cool, like the Avalanche of the past. And Austin, what do we have for outlets back here? Like, there's a huge party of selections.
The one thing that I find really cool about these outlets is they actually automatically turn on as soon as you open the little covers, which I think is kind of cool. So there's obviously some tech integrated into those little covers that are covering those outlets. But we have quite a few just standard home wall outlets sitting in there, a couple of 120 volts. And then over on our farthest side back, we have a 240 volt. Awesome. However, it's kind of a weird looking plug. It's not your standard looking 240 plug. I haven't personally seen this before, but it definitely is convenient having all of this power sitting right in the bed of this truck. Now, one thing in addition to the bed of this truck is I am thoroughly disappointed with the lack of like tie downs in here. Like, we just have our few tie downs here and there, but like we don't have anything in addition to it. Like nothing in addition to it. I feel like they could have done so much more with this bed. We have this small light off to the side here, but ultimately I feel like they should have done something above and beyond to make this bed stick out, to make it, I don't know, a little more special. I mean, maybe have the center fold down on all trims or something. I don't know.
I do like, from the aesthetic standpoint, like the third brake light that is above the rear window. And I do cool. Like kind of the side spoilers from the back. It does give it a fun, like sporty type truck. That's not what it's going for, but that's the design aspect.
This actually looks like it's straight from the Hummer EV, in my opinion.
Going back to the fact that, again, that we're getting very close to $30,000 more than a gas or potentially diesel powered. I have to remember that you can get a Silverado diesel, so forgive me for that. But we do still have towing capacity here on the EV, but it's less than what you can get if you have a motor that requires some fuel. 10,000 pounds is your max towing capacity on the Silverado EV, so it is a little bit less. Obviously, it depends how that fuel Silverado is equipped. When you come over to the driver's side, it's quite comical. The size of this non-fuel door, it has to win some sort of award for the biggest door. I'm pretty sure
see the one in the
child could get in there.
You should see the one in the Blazer EV. It's ridiculous. And I'd be very curious how the Blazer EV one works in winter, because it's got this motorized cover that pops out and slides all the way down the side of the car. Very curious how that would work with some ice over the top of it. Now, the Silverado EV does have 450 miles of range. However, you need to take that with a grain of salt when we talk about towing, of course. That is going to cut that range in half in a hurry. However, with that very large battery pack, I can promise you the Silverado EV is going to be able to tow a heck of a lot further than its competition on a single charge. I think that summarizes the exterior of this electric Avalanche. Ultimately, let's go ahead and hop behind the wheel of this thing and see what it's like out on the road. And just for fun, let's see what the Silverado runs in a 0 to 60. Now, according to Chevy, the LT model should run around a 5.5 second 0 to 60. So let's see if that's accurate. I'm just gonna go ahead and count here. Let's see what it does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About right on 6 seconds, so it's not too terribly far off. We have about 75% of battery. When you do hit it from a roll, however, lots of immediate torque, just like you're gonna get out of any electric vehicle. And just driving this thing around, I mean, compared to any other Silverado, like it definitely feels more planted around corners because of all of that low center of gravity. With that absolutely massive battery pack sitting below us, it brings that center of gravity down very low for a 1500 pickup truck. A full-size pickup is a very low center of gravity, so it can definitely take corners a bit more spiritedly than you could typically do in your standard full-size truck. Just driving the Silverado EV around town, around the highway, it is a very comfortable vehicle. It definitely cancels out exterior noise quite well, even in this lower LT trim. Now, sitting in here, I'm very familiar with the tech. I personally own an Equinox EV, and this tech is great. It's super responsive, fast, easy to use, very easy to see everything you need to see. I'm a huge fan of the way the system integrates into the just daily driving aspects of the vehicle. It makes it very, very slick. However, this one, if you look anywhere but the screens, you very quickly realize just how cheap this $75,000 pickup truck is. I am a fan of driving the Silverado EV around, and what is nice about it is, it has this ridiculous range. Like, you can go a very, very long ways and make your way back on a single charge, which is super convenient. However, what's not convenient about this vehicle is, Chevy says that you can get 100 miles of range in 10 minutes with this vehicle. So that's at a specific charger at a specific location. And the My Chevrolet app is great for picking out chargers. It is very convenient. It definitely helps. However, you need to realize, you can't trust anything when it comes to the estimated charge times. So if you are to go outside of the range, this massive battery pack is going to take a massive amount of time to charge, which is not convenient at all. Sure, you'll get 100 miles of range in 10 minutes if you manage to find the right charger. But at the average charger that you're going to find, you're going to be charging at 240 to 280 miles an hour at your standard DC fast charger that you're going to run into on the side of the road at a random dealership, which is what, when we plug this into a DC fast charger, it manages to do. That's sitting at a dealership, which is where you're going to probably end up running into when you're on a long road trip. So let's say it does charge at 280 miles an hour. With the 450 mile estimated range in the Silverado EV, you're talking about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes to charge this thing from zero. So it's just not realistic to me. And let's say you want to go ahead and use the charger that's included with your Silverado EV. Now, if you install a 240 volt outlet at your home and you use the charger that's included, you're going to get on average around 23 miles an hour of charge, which is great. That's a ton of charge. That's all you're going to need on a day-to-day basis. But for example, if you were to plug this vehicle in from 5%, something like that, it's going to take you around 19 hours to fully charge this vehicle on a level 2 charger at your house. This battery pack is huge. It takes a really long time to charge. So a lot of EVs with smaller batteries, like even the Lightning, for example, isn't going to take nearly as long to get a full charge. Granted, yes, it gets almost 100 miles less of range, but is that ultimately worth it? Because, the longer it takes to charge, the more electricity you're using too. So you really have to calculate the costs on deciding if it makes sense going from an EV to a gas vehicle. Like, is the cost really all that different? In my case, me owning one, no, it's not. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I think you have to be insane to spend $75,000 on this truck. Like actually insane. I would take a Lightning over this all day long. I don't care if it has another 120, 130, 150 miles of range. I don't care if it has 200 miles more of range than the Lightning. It's ridiculous. This truck feels so cheap.
I'm assuming that Chevy is going to have a hard time selling these EVs until we start seeing significant rebates and discounts on them. Like, there is some fun stuff. It's great that there's another EV on the market to choose from in the truck segment. But at the end of the day, I'm picking the competitors over this, at least at the base trim, right? Like, this thing is just like, for 75 grand, knowing that you can get pretty much everything else cheaper, it makes it a really, really hard sell.
And just to put into perspective how hard of a sell this is, the Tesla Cybertruck, for example, okay? This truck was going for $150,000 the start of this year, right? We're already starting to see Cybertrucks peak into the $90,000 range about 8 months later. And that vehicle has more hype like nothing else compared to the Silverado EV. So if we're seeing a vehicle with as much hype as the Tesla Cybertruck depreciate by around $80,000 in less than a year's time, I'm very, very worried for the depreciation of this truck over the course of the next few years. I think this is going to hit rock bottom when it comes to depreciation. Very curious to see what happens in the near future. Very curious what you guys have to say about the Silverado EV, but it was fun checking it out with you guys, and let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.